Commander Zethkalar sat in the cold metal chair and stared at the wall. His dark green skin had many scars from old battles. Some were from bullets, some were from burns. All of them were from fighting humans 30 years ago. The room was small and white. Dr. Volanik sat across from him with a recording device between them. The doctor was from the Galactic Historical Archive. He wanted to know about the war that changed everything. "Tell me about your service record," Dr. Volanik said. His voice was calm and soft. Zethkalar's forearms moved slowly. He touched one of the scars on his neck. It was from a human plasma rifle. The burn had never healed properly. "I was a battalion commander in the 4th Coalition Army," he said. "We were sent to the Kepler front in the 2nd year of the war. Our job was simple: crush the human resistance, take their colonies, end their rebellion." Dr. Volanik made notes on his tablet. "What were your expectations before the first battle?" Zethkalar made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It was something his people did when they were nervous. "We thought it would be easy. Our intelligence report said humans were primitive. They had basic weapons, simple tactics, no real military training." He paused and looked at his clawed hands. "We were told they would surrender after the first real fight, that they were cowards who would run when they saw our ships. But that is not what happened," Dr. Volanik said. "No. That is not what happened." Zethkalar closed his eyes. He could still see the asteroid field near New Denver. It looked peaceful, from space. Just rocks floating in the dark. The Coalition fleet moved in formation toward the mining colony. 300 ships, 50,000 soldiers. The humans had maybe 200 people on the colony. "We detected their distress signal," Zethkalar said. "They were calling for help, saying they were under attack. We thought they were scared, asking their government to save them." He opened his eyes and looked at Dr. Volanik. "We were wrong. They were not calling for help. They were calling for instructions on how to kill us." The first wave of Coalition ships entered the asteroid field. Zethkalar was in the command ship watching the screens. Everything looked normal. The asteroids were in their expected positions. The colony was sending standard mining signals. Then the explosion started. "The asteroids were not asteroids," Zethkalar said. "Some were real rocks, but many were bombs, huge bombs hidden inside fake asteroids. The humans had been preparing for months." The Coalition ships began to die. Not from enemy weapons, but from the space around them. Every rock could be a trap. Every shadow could hide death. "How many ships did you lose in the first attack?" Dr. Volanik asked. 47, in less than 10 minutes. Zethkalar remembered the panic on the command bridge. Coalition officers screaming, "Orders," trying to understand what was happening. The humans were supposed to be simple miners. They were not supposed to be able to fight back. "Admiral Korex ordered a full assault on the colony," Zethkalar said. He was angry. He wanted to show the humans what real war looked like. The Coalition forces landed on New Denver. The colony looked empty. No humans in the streets. No weapons visible. Just empty buildings and mining equipment. That was when they met Sergeant Jake Murphy. "Murphy was a human Marine," Zethkalar said. "He had 11 soldiers with him. 11 soldiers against 5,000 Coalition troops." Dr. Volanik looked up from his notes. "What made him special?" Zethkalar was quiet for a long time. He remembered Murphy's face. The human was not tall or strong. He looked ordinary. But his eyes were different. They were the eyes of someone who would never give up. "Murphy and his team had turned the entire colony into a weapon," Zethkalar said. "Every building was trapped. Every tunnel had bombs. Every door could kill you." The Coalition forces moved through the colony in standard formation. They checked each building carefully. They followed all the rules of urban warfare, but the rules did not work against humans. "The first building we entered looked safe," Zethkalar said. "My soldiers scanned it with every sensor we had. No weapons, no explosives, no humans. 20 Coalition soldiers went inside. Only 5 came out. The humans had built the trap into the walls themselves," Zethkalar said. They used mining charges from their own equipment. When we walked on the floor, it triggered the explosion. Murphy's voice came over the radio then. He was speaking in perfect coalition language. "Welcome to New Denver," he said. "Hope you enjoy your stay." The psychological warfare had begun. For 6 hours, Murphy and his 11 soldiers held off the entire coalition force. They moved through tunnels the miners had dug. They appeared in places that should have been impossible to reach. They killed coalition soldiers and then vanished like ghosts. Murphy knew we would intercept his radio signals. Zethkalar said. He wanted us to hear him. He talked to his men about their families back on Earth, about their children, about why they were fighting. The human soldiers were not professional military. They were engineers, miners, and technicians. But they fought like demons. They used tools and equipment in ways the coalition had never seen. One of Murphy's men was named Pete Collins, Zethkalar said. He was a mining engineer. He used industrial cutting tools to attack our armor. He turned construction robots into weapons. He made bombs from fertilizer and fuel. Dr. Volanik was writing quickly now. What was your casualty rate? After 6 hours, we had lost 300 soldiers. Murphy had lost 3. The coalition forces called for air support. Bombers came from orbit to destroy the colony. But Murphy had prepared for that too. He had hidden anti-aircraft weapons in the mining equipment, weapons that looked like normal tools until they started shooting. 2 coalition bombers crashed into the colony. The explosions destroyed several buildings, but Murphy's voice came over the radio again. "Thanks for the fireworks," he said. "My men were getting bored." Admiral Korex was furious. He ordered a final assault. Every remaining coalition soldier would attack at once. They would overwhelm the humans with pure numbers. I led the final attack myself, Zethkalar said. I wanted to see Murphy die. I wanted to end this nightmare. They found Murphy in the main mining complex. He was wounded and bleeding. His rifle was broken. He had only his sidearm left. Most of his men were dead, but he was still fighting. Murphy looked at me when I entered the room, Zethkalar said. He was dying, but he smiled. He said something I will never forget. What did he say? He said, "Tell your admiral this was just the warm-up." Murphy killed 3 more coalition soldiers before he died. Even with a broken body and no hope, he kept fighting. He never surrendered. He never begged for mercy. He just fought until his heart stopped. The battle for New Denver was over. The coalition had won, but it did not feel like victory. We lost almost 800 soldiers, Zethkalar said. Murphy lost 12, but something else happened that day. Something that changed everything. Dr. Volanik looked up. What was that? We realized we were not fighting miners and engineers. We were fighting something else. Something that would die before it would quit. Something that would turn every rock and every tool into a weapon. Zethkalar touched the scar on his neck again. That was the day we learned that humans do not fight wars. They fight for their lives, for their families, for their future, and they will never stop. The recording device kept running. But both beings in the room were quiet now. The weight of that first battle hung in the air between them. Murphy's last words were not a threat, Zethkalar said finally. They were a promise, and humans always keep their promises. Dr. Volanik noticed that Zethkalar looked worse than before. The alien's skin was pale green instead of its normal dark color. His 4 eyes had dark circles around them. He moved slowly when he sat down. Have you been sleeping? Dr. Volanik asked. Zethkalar made the clicking sound with his mandibles. Sleep brings dreams. Dreams bring memories. I prefer to stay awake. The recording device started again. Dr. Volanik waited for the alien to begin speaking. After New Denver, they transferred me to the Titan front, Zethkalar said. Command thought I needed easier duty. Titan base was supposed to be simple. Take the base. Hold the base. Wait for the humans to give up. He stared at the wall. They sent 3 army groups, 90,000 soldiers. The humans had maybe 5,000 defenders. Our generals thought it would take 1 week. How long? Did it actually take? 6 months. 6 months of hell. Zethkalar closed his eyes and went back to that time. Titan Base sat on a moon covered in ice and rock. It was a human military training facility. Nothing special. Just barracks and training, grounds and storage buildings. The coalition fleet arrived in overwhelming force. Hundreds of ships blocked out the stars. The humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they sent a message. The message came from Colonel Lisa Hayes, Zethkalar said. She was the human commander. She spoke perfect Zephyrian. Not just the words, but the accent, the cultural references. She sounded like she grew up on our homeworld. Dr. Volanik stopped writing. How is that possible? We never found out. But Hayes knew things about us that should have been impossible. She knew the names of our family members. She knew about our military traditions. She knew our weaknesses. The first attack on Titan Base failed completely. The coalition forces expected quick victory. Instead, they found prepared positions and deadly traps. The humans had spent months turning their base into a fortress. Hayes had studied our tactics for years, Zethkalar said. Every move we made, she was ready for it. Every strategy we tried, she had a counter-strategy. But the real horror was not the fighting. It was what Hayes did to the coalition soldiers. Every night, Hayes would broadcast messages to the coalition camps. She spoke in different languages. Zephyrian for Zethkalar's people, Krillian for the insect soldiers, Forthan for the energy beings. She knew them all. She would talk about our homes, Zethkalar said, about the families we left behind. She knew my mother's name. She knew that I had 3 brothers. She knew about my daughter's first day at school. Hayes would play music from coalition worlds, songs that soldiers heard as children, lullabies their mothers sang to them. She would read poetry in ancient languages that only scholars knew. It was psychological warfare, Zethkalar said, but not like anything we had seen before. She was not trying to scare us. She was trying to make us homesick. The messages worked. Coalition soldiers began to desert, not because they were afraid, but because they missed their families. Hayes had reminded them what they were fighting for, and it was not conquest. After 2 weeks, Hayes started returning our wounded, Zethkalar said. But she did not just send them back. She healed them first. Dr. Volanik looked confused. Healed them? The humans had better medical technology than we did. Hayes would treat coalition injuries with equipment we had never seen. Broken bones healed in days. Burns disappeared completely. Diseases that our doctors could not cure were fixed in hours. But that was not the worst part. With each healed soldier, Hayes sent a personal message. She would write letters to our commanders, Zethkalar said. Letters that showed she knew everything about coalition military structure. She knew which officers were corrupt. She knew about secret deals and hidden scandals. She knew things that could destroy careers. The letters were not threats. They were just information. But the message was clear. Hayes could hurt the coalition leadership anytime she wanted. She was choosing not to. It made our commanders paranoid, Zethkalar said. They started to suspect each other. They wondered who was giving information to the humans. Trust began to break down. Then came the night of silent screams. Zethkalar was quiet for a long time. Dr. Volanik waited. Finally, the alien continued. Hayes had captured coalition equipment and uniforms. Her soldiers could move through our camps without being seen. They looked like us in the dark. On that night, Hayes sent her best soldiers into coalition positions. They moved like ghosts through the camps. They did not attack directly. Instead, they did something worse. They sabotaged everything, Zethkalar said. Communication equipment stopped working. Vehicles would not start. Weapons jammed. Food supplies were contaminated. Medical equipment broke down. But the humans did not hurt any coalition soldiers that night. They just made sure nothing worked properly. By morning, entire companies were cut off from command. They had no radios, no transport, no working weapons. They were helpless, but alive. The psychological impact was terrible. Coalition soldiers began to fear the dark. They jumped at shadows. They could not trust their own equipment. Every night they wondered if The humans would come again. Hayes sent another message after that night, Zethkalar said. She said she could have killed us all while we slept, but she chose not to. She wanted us to think about why. Dr. Volanik was writing quickly. What happened to morale? It collapsed. Soldiers began to refuse night duty. Officers started sleeping. Insecure bunkers. Everyone was afraid to be alone in the dark. The siege continued for months. Coalition forces could not advance because of the traps and defenses, but they could not retreat because of orders from high command. They were stuck on the ice moon with an enemy who seemed to know their every thought. The worst moment came when we found Captain Danny Torres, Zethkalar said. Torres was a human pilot who had been shot down weeks earlier. He was badly injured and taken to a coalition medical facility. The doctors tried to save him, but his wounds were too severe. He died after 3 days. We thought Torres was just another casualty, Zethkalar said, but Hayes had planned for his capture. She knew he would die in our medical facility. When coalition doctors tried to examine Torres's body, it exploded. The human had been fitted with a delayed action device that activated after death. The explosion killed 2 coalition medics and destroyed valuable medical equipment. The message was clear, Zethkalar said. Even dead humans were dangerous. Even their corpses were weapons. Hayes sent another broadcast that night. She spoke about Torres, how he was a father of 2 children, how he loved to paint pictures of birds, how he volunteered at an orphanage on Earth. She made us see Torres as a person, Zethkalar said. Not just an enemy soldier, but a real being with a real life. Then she reminded us that we had killed him. The siege finally ended when Coalition High Command ordered a full retreat. They could not afford to lose 3 entire army groups to 1 human base. Hayes allowed the Coalition forces to leave without attacking them. She could have destroyed us during the retreat, Zethkalar said. Our ships were damaged, our morale was broken. We were defenseless. But Hayes let them go. She even provided medical supplies for the wounded coalition soldiers. Her final message was simple. Give my regards to your families. The retreat from Titan Base was the most shameful moment of my military career, Zethkalar said. We had overwhelming force, superior technology, more soldiers. But we lost to a human who understood us better than we understood ourselves. Dr. Volanik stopped writing. What happened to Colonel Hayes? She died defending Earth 3 years later. But her tactics spread to other human commanders. They all learned to fight our minds as well as our bodies. Zethkalar touched his scars again. Hayes taught us that humans do not just fight wars. They study their enemies. They learn everything about them. Then they use that knowledge as a weapon. The room was quiet. The recording device kept running, but neither being spoke. After Titan Base, I was afraid of humans, Zethkalar said finally. Not because they could kill me, but because they could make me question everything I believed about myself. Dr. Volanik arrived at the interview room to find Zethkalar already waiting. The alien veteran sat perfectly still, staring at his hands. His breathing was shallow and quick. When he looked up, his 4 eyes seemed unfocused. Are you ready to continue? Dr. Volanik asked. Zethkalar nodded slowly. I requested extra time to prepare myself. Some memories are harder to face than others. The recording device clicked on. Dr. Volanik settled into his chair and waited. After the disaster at Titan Base, they transferred me to the 4th Battle Fleet, Zethkalar said. Admiral Croixval commanded the finest naval force in Coalition history. We had 60 dreadnoughts. Each one could destroy a planet. He paused and touched the burn scar on his neck. Our mission was to eliminate human naval forces in the Outer Rim. Intelligence reports said the humans had converted some mining ships into warships. We thought it would be target practice. Dr. Volanik made notes. What was your role in the fleet? I commanded the heavy cruiser Vengeance. It was a beautiful ship, built on the forge worlds of Kepler, armed with plasma cannons that could cut through asteroids. My crew had trained for 20 years. Zethkalar's voice grew quiet. We were proud. The 4th Battle Fleet had never lost a battle. Our ships were works of art. Our crews were the best warriors the Coalition had ever produced. The fleet moved through space in perfect formation, 60 ships arranged in battle groups that had conquered 100 worlds. They expected to find a few desperate humans in converted cargo haulers. Instead, they found Captain Alex Carter. Carter's ship was called the CNS Defiance, Zethkalar said. It used to be an asteroid mining vessel, big and ugly and slow, the kind of ship we would use for hauling garbage. Dr. Volanik looked up from his notes. How many ships did Carter have? 5. All converted mining ships. His crew were volunteers, mechanics and miners and dock workers, people who had never seen real military training. The Coalition fleet should have destroyed Carter's ships in minutes. The humans had no proper weapons, no military armor, no trained gunners. It should have been a massacre. Admiral Croexval ordered a standard attack formation, Zethkalar said. We would surround the human ships and demand surrender. If they refused, we would destroy them quickly. But Carter had other plans. When the Coalition fleet moved into attack position, the human ships scattered. Not in panic, but in a planned pattern. Each ship went in a different direction, forcing the Coalition fleet to split up. Carter was using mining tactics, Zethkalar said. When miners work an asteroid field, they spread out to cover more ground. Carter applied the same strategy to space combat. The first surprise came when Carter's ships began launching cargo pods, hundreds of them, filling the space between the fleets. The Coalition sensors could not tell which pods contained weapons and which were just debris. Our gunners started shooting at everything, Zethkalar said. We wasted thousands of rounds on empty cargo containers, but some of the pods were not empty. Hidden among the debris were remote-controlled mines. Not military explosives, but industrial mining charges, the kind used to crack open asteroids. When Coalition ships got close, the charges detonated. 3. Coalition destroyers were damaged in the first wave. Not destroyed, but hurt badly enough to fall out of formation. Carter's voice came over the radio then. Welcome to the working man's war, he said. Hope you boys know how to get your hands dirty. The psychological warfare began immediately. Carter's ship started broadcasting on all frequencies, not military communications, but personal messages from human civilians. They played recordings from Earth, Zethkalar said. Families talking about their sons and daughters in the military, children sending messages to their parents, old people reading letters from grandchildren. The broadcasts were not meant to scare Coalition forces. They were meant to make them think, to remind them that the humans they were fighting had families and loved ones just like they did. One recording was from a little girl named Amy Peterson, Zethkalar said. She was maybe 6 years old. She was talking to her father who served on Carter's ship. She said she missed him and wanted him to come home safe. Dr. Volanik stopped writing. Why did that affect your crew? Because it reminded us of our own families. My weapons officer had a daughter the same age. Hearing that little girl's voice made him think about what we were really doing. The battle continued for hours. Carter's ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking at Coalition vessels and then disappearing into asteroid fields. They turned the space around them into a maze of debris and hidden dangers. Carter knew we had better ships and weapons, Zethkalar said, so he made the battle about something else. He made it about endurance and willpower. The humans began broadcasting funeral music, slow, sad songs from Earth. Between the songs, they read the names of dead Coalition soldiers from previous battles, not in a mocking way, but respectfully, like they were honoring fallen warriors. They read my brother's name, Zethkalar said. He died at the Battle of Proxima Station. Carter's people somehow knew about him. They spoke his name clearly and correctly. They even mentioned that he had received the Silver Star for bravery. The psychological impact was devastating. Coalition crews began to question why they were fighting. The humans were treating their dead enemies with more respect than their own commanders did. Admiral Krexval ordered a final assault. All 60 Coalition ships would attack at once. They would overwhelm the humans with pure firepower and end the battle quickly. That was when Carter showed us his real plan, Zethkalar said. The 5 human ships suddenly turned toward the coalition fleet, not to escape but to attack. They were making a suicide run against ships 10 times their size. Carter's ship was already badly damaged, Zethkalar said. I could see holes in the hull, fires burning inside, but he kept coming straight at Admiral Croixval's flagship. The coalition fleet poured fire into the approaching human ships, plasma cannons and missile batteries and particle beams. The space between the fleets lit up like a star. 4 of Carter's ships were destroyed. Their crews died fighting to the cow, last second never slowing down or changing course, but Carter's ship kept coming. The Defiance was a wreck, Zethkalar said. Half the ship was gone. The bridge was exposed to space. But Carter was still at the controls, steering manually. Coalition gunners shot everything they had at Carter's ship. But mining vessels are built tough. They are designed to survive asteroid, impacts and solar radiation. Carter's ship absorbed damage that would have destroyed a proper warship. I watched through my scope as Carter's ship hit the flagship, Zethkalar said. The collision was like a small moon crashing into a space station. Both ships broke apart. The explosion lit up the entire fleet. When the light faded, both the Defiance and the flagship were gone. Admiral Croixval was dead. Carter was dead. But the battle was not over. We found Carter's body in the wreckage, Zethkalar said. He was still strapped to his pilot seat, still holding the controls. He had steered his dying ship into our flagship manually. Carter's final transmission was recorded by the coalition fleet. His voice was calm and steady, even as his ship was breaking apart around him. Tell them we were here, he said. Tell them we fought for our families and our freedom. Tell them we will never surrender. The battle should have ended there. 4 human ships destroyed. 1 coalition flagship lost, but the fleet intact. A costly victory, but still a victory. But Carter had planned for this too, Zethkalar said. Over the next 3 months, coalition supply convoys began disappearing. Ships would vanish without sending distress signals. Cargo vessels would be found empty, drifting in space with their crews missing. The other 4 ships had not been destroyed, Zethkalar said. Their crews had somehow survived and turned their wrecked vessels into ghost ships. They were hunting us. The phantom ships would appear without warning, attack coalition vessels, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. They used stealth technology that should not have existed on mining ships. We called them the Ghost Fleet, Zethkalar said. They haunted the shipping lanes for months. Every coalition captain feared seeing them on their sensors. Dr. Volanik looked up. Were they ever caught? 1 ship was found eventually, empty and powerless, drifting near a dead star. The crew had written messages on the walls before they died. Messages to their families, promises that humanity would never give up. Zethkalar was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Carter and his people were not soldiers. They were workers, ordinary people with families and jobs and dreams. But they fought like heroes from ancient legends. The alien veteran looked at Dr. Volanik with haunted eyes. That battle taught me something terrible about humans. They do not just fight to win, they fight to be remembered, and their ghosts never stop hunting you. Dr. Volanik had to wait 3 weeks before Zethkalar agreed to continue the interviews. When the alien veteran finally appeared, he looked like he had aged years in just a few days. His movements were slow and careful. His eyes darted around the room as if expecting danger. I have not been sleeping, Zethkalar said before Dr. Volanik could ask. Every time I close my eyes, I see the tunnels, I hear the voices, I smell the smoke. Dr. Volanik started the recording device. We can stop any time you need to. No. People need to know what happened down there. They need to understand what humans become when you corner them in their own cities. Zethkalar sat back in his chair and began to speak. After the Ghost Fleet incident, High Command decided to attack Earth directly. They thought if we could take the human homeworld, the resistance would collapse. They assigned me to the ground invasion force. He touched the deep scar that ran across his forehead. I was given command of a battalion for the assault on Chicago. The city was already damaged from orbital bombardment. We expected to find refugees and survivors hiding in the ruins. Dr. Volanik made notes. What did you find instead? We found Lieutenant Mary Johnson, and we learned that humans fight differently when you threaten their homes. Johnson had been a civil engineer before the war. She knew Chicago like most people, know their own houses. Every street, every building, every tunnel and pipe and wire. When the coalition invaded, she turned that knowledge into a weapon. Johnson had spent months preparing the city, Zeth Kalar said. She used the subway system, the storm drains, the old mining tunnels from the previous century. She connected them all into one giant underground network. The coalition forces entered Chicago expecting urban warfare, house-to-house fighting, rooftop snipers, standard city combat. Instead, they found a city that was alive and hunting them. We would occupy a building and Johnson's people would attack from below, Zeth Kalar said. They came up through the sewers, through basement walls, through subway tunnels. They hit us and disappeared before we could respond. But the real horror was not the attacks. It was what Johnson did to captured coalition soldiers. Most armies kill their prisoners or use them for information, Zeth Kalar said. Johnson did something worse. She tried to educate them. Dr. Volanik looked confused. Educate them how? She captured coalition soldiers and kept them in what we called the teaching rooms, comfortable places with food and medical care, but she made them watch videos. Zeth Kalar's voice grew quiet. The videos were testimonies from human civilians, families talking about how the invasion had affected their lives, children describing what happened to their parents, old people explaining what they had lost. The captured soldiers were not tortured or interrogated. They were simply forced to listen to human stories. Hour after hour, day after day, stories about fear and loss and hope. One video was from a teacher named Mrs. Rodriguez, Zeth Kalar said. She talked about her students, how some had lost their parents in the bombing, how they still came to school every day because learning gave them hope for the future. Another video showed a doctor named Kevin Price. He worked in a hospital that had been damaged by coalition bombs. He explained how he operated on children without proper equipment, how he saved lives using improvised tools and sheer determination. The videos were not propaganda, Zeth Kalar said. They were just humans telling their stories, but they had a terrible effect on our soldiers. Coalition troops who were rescued from the teaching rooms came back changed. They moved slowly and spoke quietly. Many refused to continue fighting. Some even deserted to join human refugee camps. Johnson was weaponizing empathy, Zeth Kalar said. She was making our soldiers see humans as people instead of enemies. Once you see someone as a person, it becomes very hard to kill them. The underground war continued for months. Coalition forces controlled the surface, but Johnson owned everything below ground. Her network of tunnels allowed her people to appear anywhere in the city without warning. She would send messages to our commanders, Zeth Kalar said. Not threats or demands, just information about our families back home. Personal details that showed how much she knew about us. Johnson somehow had access to coalition personnel files. She knew about soldiers' children, their hobbies, their fears. She would send birthday cards to coalition troops on their special days. She would mail pictures of their families with notes saying she hoped they would all be reunited soon. It was psychological warfare at its most sophisticated, Zeth Kalar said. She was not trying to break our spirits. She was trying to remind us that we had spirits. The worst incident happened when Johnson's forces captured a coalition supply convoy. Instead of taking the supplies, they replaced them with care packages, food from Earth, music recordings, and personal letters from human civilians. The letters were addressed to individual coalition soldiers, Zeth Kalar said. Somehow Johnson knew our names and ranks. She had humans write to us personally. One letter was addressed to Zeth Kalar himself. It was from a human child named Billy Watson. The boy wrote about his pet dog and his favorite books. He said he hoped the war would end soon so everyone could go home to their families. Reading. That letter was like being stabbed in the heart, Zeth Kalar said. This human child was writing to an enemy soldier with kindness and hope. It made me question everything I believed about the war. Dr. Volanik stopped writing. How did Johnson get that kind of information? We never found out. But she seemed to know everything about every coalition soldier in the city. Our fears, our hopes, our weaknesses. She used that knowledge not to hurt us, but to make us human. The coalition forces tried everything to stop Johnson. They flooded the tunnels. They used poison gas. They brought in special equipment designed for underground warfare. Nothing worked. Johnson knew the city too well, Seth Kalar said. Every time we blocked one tunnel, she opened two more. Every time we poisoned one area, she had already moved her people somewhere else. The final confrontation came when coalition forces cornered Johnson in a collapsed subway station. She was wounded and alone, cut off from her network of tunnels. Her radio was broken. She had no weapons except a small pistol. I found her first, Seth Kalar said. She was sitting against a wall, bleeding from a head wound. She looked up at me and smiled. Johnson was dying, but she was still working. She had a tablet computer and was typing messages with her good hand. Even facing death, she was coordinating resistance activities across the city. I could have killed her easily, Seth Kalar said. She was helpless. But I found myself talking to her instead. Johnson spoke perfect coalition standard language. She asked about Seth Kalar's family. She mentioned his daughter by name and asked how her schooling was going. She talked about the weather on his home world and whether the harvest season had been good. She treated me like a person, Seth Kalar said. Even though I was her enemy, even though I had come to kill her, she was interested in my life and my family. They talked for almost an hour. Johnson explained her tactics and why she had chosen to fight the way she did. She was not trying to win the war through violence. She was trying to win it through understanding. She said something I will never forget, Seth Kalar said. She said that humans do not fight to destroy their enemies. They fight to convert them. Johnson's final act was to transmit new instructions to the remaining resistance cells, technical specifications for a new type of explosive device. Even as she died, she was teaching her people how to fight more effectively. Her last words were, "Not about victory or revenge," Seth Kalar said. She asked me to tell her daughter that she loved her. She wanted me to explain that she had fought not out of hatred, but out of love. Johnson died with a smile on her face. Seth Kalar sat with her body for a long time, wondering how someone could show such kindness to an enemy who had come to kill her. The underground war ended with Johnson's death, Seth Kalar said, but her methods spread to other human commanders across the galaxy. They all learned to fight hearts and minds instead of just bodies. Dr. Volanik put down his pen. The room was quiet except for the humming of the recording device. That battle taught me that humans are not just warriors. Seth Kalar said finally, they are teachers. And the lesson they teach is that your enemies are people too. 2 months passed before Seth Kalar agreed to the final interview. When Dr. Volanik entered the room, he barely recognized the alien veteran. Seth Kalar's skin had turned a pale gray color. His 4 arms moved slowly, as if they were too heavy to lift. The scars on his body seemed darker than before. "This will be our last session," Seth Kalar said quietly. "After today, I will not speak of these things again." Dr. Volanik sat down carefully. "Are you sure you want to continue?" "The story must be finished. People need to understand how the war really ended. They need to know what we learned about humans and about ourselves." The recording device started with its familiar click. Seth Kalar stared at the wall for a long time before he began to speak. "The coalition won the war," he said. "That is what the history books will say. We achieved our strategic goals. We took control of human space. We established military governments on their worlds." He paused and touched the scar on his neck. But victory felt like defeat. Everything we thought we knew about warfare had been proven wrong. After 4 years of fighting, the coalition forces controlled most human territory. Earth was occupied. The major colonies had surrendered. Human military resistance was reduced to scattered groups hiding in remote systems. "High Command declared victory," Seth Kalar said. "They said the human threat was eliminated. They said we could begin the occupation phase and move on to other conquests. But the humans had one final lesson to teach. Seth Kalar was assigned to the occupation force on a small human world called Haven Colony. The planet had a population of about 50,000 civilians. Most were farmers and miners. The military commander was Captain Steve Mitchell. Mitchell was different from the other human officers we had fought, Zeth Kalar said. He was older, calmer. He did not seem angry or desperate like the others. When coalition forces arrived at Haven Colony, they expected the usual pattern. The humans would fight desperately for a while, then retreat to hidden positions and begin guerrilla warfare. Instead, Mitchell sent a message asking for a meeting. He wanted to discuss terms, Zeth Kalar said. Not surrender terms. Discussion. Terms. He wanted to talk about what would happen after the fighting stopped. Dr. Volanik looked up from his notes. That was unusual. Completely. Most human commanders fought to the death. They never considered what came after the war. Mitchell was thinking about the future. The meeting took place in a small building on the outskirts of the colony. Mitchell came alone as requested. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who had seen too much war. Mitchell began by acknowledging that the coalition had won, Zeth Kalar said. He said the humans could not continue fighting indefinitely, but he wanted to discuss what victory meant. Instead of negotiating military surrender, Mitchell started talking about philosophy. He asked questions about coalition society, what they valued, what they feared, what they hoped to achieve through conquest. He was not trying to buy time or gather intelligence, Zeth Kalar said. He was genuinely curious about us. He wanted to understand why we fought and what we planned to do with our victory. Mitchell explained that humans had studied coalition culture for years. Not just military tactics, but art and literature and philosophy. He quoted coalition poets and discussed coalition history with the knowledge of a scholar. He knew more about our civilization than most coalition citizens did, Zeth Kalar said. He understood our motivations better than our own leaders. The conversation continued for hours. Mitchell talked about human values and beliefs. He explained why humans fought so desperately, not just for territory or resources, but for ideas about freedom and dignity. He said something that changed my entire understanding of the war, Zeth Kalar said. He said that humans do not fight to win battles. They fight to win hearts. Mitchell began broadcasting these philosophical discussions to coalition forces across the planet. Not propaganda or threats, but genuine conversations about the nature of war and peace and civilization. He used the colony's communication system to reach every coalition soldier, Zeth Kalar said. Every night he would talk about different topics: art, science, philosophy, family life. He made us think about things we had never considered. Broadcasts became known as the Mountain Dialogues, because Mitchell transmitted from a facility built into the mountains. Coalition soldiers began listening voluntarily. They looked forward to the nightly discussions. Mitchell talked about his own life, Zeth Kalar said. His wife who died in the early bombing raids, his son who served in the human navy, his memories of Earth before the war. But Mitchell did not speak with bitterness or hatred. He talked about loss and grief, but also about hope and forgiveness. He discussed the possibility of peace between humans and the coalition. He said that the real war was not between species, but between different ideas about how civilizations should treat each other, Zeth Kalar said. He made us question whether conquest was worth the cost. Coalition morale began to change. Soldiers, who had been proud of their victories, started to feel uncertain. The Mountain Dialogues forced them to see the war from the human perspective. Mitchell talked about coalition soldiers who had died in the war, Zeth Kalar said. He spoke about them with respect and sadness. He said he was sorry that brave beings had to die for the mistakes of their leaders. Dr. Volanik stopped writing. How did Coalition Command respond? They ordered Mitchell to stop the broadcasts. But he controlled the planetary communication network. Every time they shut down one transmitter, he activated another. The situation came to a head when coalition reinforcements arrived with orders to eliminate Mitchell and his remaining forces. The humans were trapped in their mountain facility with no hope of escape. I led the final assault myself, Zeth Kalar said. But when we reached Mitchell's position, something unexpected happened. Instead of fighting, Mitchell asked for one final conversation. He wanted to discuss the terms of his surrender and the treatment of civilian populations. He said he was ready to die, but he wanted to make sure his people would be treated with dignity, Zethkalar said. He was more concerned about others than about himself. Mitchell offered to provide complete intelligence about remaining human military assets in exchange for protection of civilian populations. He had detailed information that could end the resistance war years earlier. He was giving us everything, Zethkalar said. Locations of hidden bases, names of resistance leaders, supply routes and communication codes, everything we needed to completely defeat the human resistance. But Mitchell had one condition. He wanted coalition forces to promise that human civilians would be treated according to galactic humanitarian standards. No slave labor, no forced relocations, no collective punishment. He was negotiating not for military advantage, but for the welfare of people he would never see again, Zethkalar said. He was sacrificing himself to save strangers. The final agreement was signed in Mitchell's mountain facility. He provided all the intelligence he had promised. Coalition forces used the information to locate and peacefully negotiate with remaining human resistance groups. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a handshake, Zethkalar said. Mitchell surrendered himself to coalition custody and was executed according to military law. But his ideas lived on. Dr. Volanik was writing quickly now. What happened to the coalition forces? We were changed. The mountain dialogues had made us see humans as people instead of enemies. Many soldiers resigned their commissions. Others demanded reforms in how the coalition treated conquered populations. Zethkalar explained that Mitchell's final broadcasts spread throughout coalition space. His ideas about dignity and respect for civilians became popular among coalition citizens who were tired of endless wars of conquest. Mitchell achieved something that military victory could not, Zethkalar said. He changed how an entire civilization thought about war and peace. The veteran was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I resigned my commission the day after Mitchell died. I could not continue serving in an army that had won by force, but lost in spirit. Dr. Volanik put down his pen. What did you learn from these experiences? I learned that humans fight differently than any other species, Zethkalar said. They do not just fight with weapons and tactics. They fight with ideas and values and hope. He looked directly at Dr. Volanik with his tired eyes. The coalition won every battle, but humans won the war. They changed us. They made us better than we were. They taught us that true victory comes not from conquering your enemies, but from earning their respect. Zethkalar stood up slowly. That is why I agreed to these interviews. People need to understand what really happened. The coalition achieved military victory, but humans achieved something greater. They achieved moral victory. The recording device clicked off. The room was silent. Humans taught us that the strongest weapon is not fear or force, Zethkalar said as he walked toward the door. The strongest weapon is the ability to make your enemies see themselves as you see them. And if you see them with compassion, they will learn to see you the same way. He paused at the doorway. That is the final lesson of the war. Humans do not defeat their enemies, they convert them.